Hey guys, this week I'm in Western Kentucky at a property I found doing one of the things that I like to do to discover new waters, and that's flying around on Google Earth, flying around on aerial photography, then finding the plat that tells me who owns the property, reaching out to them, and gaining access. And so once I've gained access to a property like this, I do one of my favorite things, and that's to fish alone. You know, as much as I like to fish with people, especially when you've approached a property owner and you're going to a place for the first time, it's a little more difficult to say, hey, can I bring a friend? So I use it as an excuse a lot of times to get out by myself. Oh man, I can't take you this time because I just got permission to fish this place. And so one of the cool things about doing this is I get out there, I get to use all my skill sets, my reading electronics, my reading the water, my arsenal of what lure works in what situation, do a little bit of experimenting, playing around. And so for me, this discovering new waters, and then once you get access, discovering how to fish that particular body of water. So we're switching it up this week from Western Kentucky with me just fishing by myself. You know, when you get to a new fishery, that's a good indicator right there that you got some healthy fish, little thick backs. It's early in the feeding time, so they've got a narrow belly, but it's not sunken in. You don't have that big head, skinny body syndrome. Generally, bass in that 10 to 12 inch range that have good thickness to their body, got good color, is super indicative of a healthy fishery. So we're gonna start this thing off and dissect it just like I do any body of water for the first time. Early in the morning with the shade, it's always fun to catch a few on top water. You might find a big girl up shallow. Odds are in a place like this with deep water near shallow water, those big females are laying out there in 8, 10, 12 feet of water near a stump. They'll move up specifically for the feeding time and probably drop right back down and just lay there, a lot like we would laying up under the air conditioning in the middle of the summer, or setting up a hammock and spending an afternoon hanging in a tree when the outside temperatures are perfect. So we're in that transition time right now where it's cool overnight, relatively cool in the morning, warms back up in the middle of the day. So we're gonna play with dissecting a fishery when you're discovering new waters and see if we can't find some big girls hiding in this place. The way to start the day, little topwater toad action. Because it's what we like to refer to as Topwater Tuesday. Here we go. Oh yeah. Handheld that thing. You know, one of the things that you do when you find these really great properties is you have to kind of make at least a rudimentary assessment of the health of the fishery. And based on the experience that I have working with lots of guys that have a lot more experience than me, when you're catching this many fish in a body of water this small, there needs to be some management. But there's great little gems out there like this, and you know, by working with the landowner, you can turn one of these gold nuggets into a diamond. You know, I've never been a real big fan of trolling, but one thing I do like to do is paddle in a grid to learn a new area with my electronics. And with the Torpedo, I can speed that process up. And I figured, since I'm gridding this place out, why not drag a bait? And I've got this Strike King XD10 just digging bottom. And I can just imagine a big old girl laying down there ready to smash it. So we're gonna give it a whirl and see what happens. That didn't exactly produce any big fish, nor did I really expect it to, but it was a cool curiosity thing for me to drag this big crankbait along the bottom. So one of the things that bass fishermen tend to do is start to, oh man, that's the shaded side of the lake. So they head to the shady side of the lake. What happens though, especially when you have your cool nights and the days start to warm up and the bass are in that transition, is those big vertical stalks of grass that grow up from the bottom. We as bass fishermen a lot of times think of the shade as what we see on the surface, but underneath the water, when the sun's penetrating, the backside of those vertical stalks of grass provides shade. So if you head over to those banks, the sunny banks, on these cooler days where it warms up later in the day, and throw spinner baits, crankbaits, swim baits up to the bank, bring it back towards you, in between those stalks or running it right along the edge, those bass are hiding in that shaded line right up against the grass, and they'll jet out real quick and ambush feed on pretty much anything that comes by them. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna avoid the tendency to head over to the shady side, and I'm gonna head over to the sunny side with a flashy crankbait, run it through that grass, and pick up a big girl. Well, at least I'm gonna try. There's a fish just rolled right up on the edge of that grass line. You know, and if I've said it once, I'll say it several hundred times on the show. There's something gratifying about just trying stuff and catching fish. And obviously this is no major accomplishment, catching a little sub 2 pound dink, but calling your shots and figuring out in a particular body of water where the fish are gonna be and making it happen, that's just affirmation that the work you're putting in, the lessons that you're learning, the things that you're keying in on your journals or your notes, or just that little sixth sense that makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck, that's all part of the road to becoming a better angler, or from, you know, going from fisherman to angler. A lot of people go fishing, some people go catching. You know, I think everybody's goal is to fish less and catch more, and putting these little things together and being able to duplicate them, being able to repeat them, and being able to consistently repeat them are the things that, for me, are the most rewarding about getting out here and putting in that time on the water. Well, these guys are definitely digging this pattern. They're right on this outer grass. And in most situations, I'm catching these fish where the angler would be sitting, casting up shallow, if you were doing the traditional beat the bank. So this is another one of those scenarios where you just kind of think about fishing a little bit differently. Realize all this grass that's not as dense as the grass along the bank, but it's a little more scattered. Those fish have dropped off into that, and they're lined up right behind the stalks, setting with their nose right up against it in the shade. Anytime I can get that bait to come right by one of them, or tick it and kind of rip it free and get a clean release, one of them smashes it. So they're scattered, but when I can find those big clusters, about as big around as a 5-gallon bucket, with a good space around it that I can bring the bait through, there's usually one sitting there.